In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Merrill Chandler, your host of the Get Fundable podcast. And in this episode, we have got, I've got a great guest for you, a great guest for you. Whitney Sewell has been for over a dozen years, has been in the real estate marketplace, but specifically in syndications, passive income for those of us who would rather have a passive income with aggressive returns and not have to do the fixing, the flipping, the monitoring, the holding, and all of it. So when we get back, we're going to talk to Whitney, and you're going to be amazed at some of his lifetime goals, what is his Z, and how he's accomplished it in just a few short years. We'll be right back. Welcome, everybody. Merrill Chandler, your host of the Get Fundable universe, and in this particular case, the Get Fundable podcast. It is my pleasure to be able to bring a gentleman on as a guest today that I believe is last summer. I was on his podcast, and we had a blast. And this guy knows more than anybody else that I've ever met when it comes to, because he paid the price. We'll get into that in a moment. But when I'd like to introduce Whitney Sewell, and Whitney, welcome to the Get Fundable podcast, where it's our job, you and me, to help our listeners, our subscribers, get fundable. But many times once I've helped them get credit lines, business loans, commercial loans in their hot little hand, they want to know what to do with it. Hence why you're here. So please introduce yourself and tell us kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of how you got to be sitting here in my studio, and then and we'll pick it up from there.
Awesome, Merrill. A pleasure to be here. I looked back, and I think it was almost a year ago that you were on my show. And so incredible to meet you and hear your story as well. So grateful to be here now. Personally, apartment syndicator, we buy large apartment communities, mostly in Colorado and Idaho. So have just under 1,000 units out there, about $150 million worth. And so, we scaled quickly in the syndication business. But if you want, I'm happy to go back. I'll tell you a little story about how I got to where we're at now.
Please. Yeah, because everybody is starting where you started, right? I started back in the day. People don't want to know just what I know now. They want to know that they can get there too, right?
That's right.
So give us that origin story of how this all just, did you in sixth grade, when your assignment was, what do you want to be when you grow up? Was it a apartment complex syndicator?
Absolutely not. That's for sure.
Right?
I didn't. Real estate was not on my radar at all at that point, by no means. So ultimately, had no clue. I thought I was probably I had a just desire to ride horses. And train horses my whole life. I think when I was that age, and still have a desire for that. But we'll get into that. Actually, in March of 2001, Merrill, I decided to join the military. I was 17. And thought it was just the right thing to do. Right, it was before our nation was attacked, but I thought, I want to serve. My best friend and I signed up together, and what we found out was, a couple years later, we were spending all of 2005 in Iraq, and so spent a year overseas, learned a lot, to say the least. Unfortunately, not everyone in my squad made it home. But I'm very thankful to be here. All right. Very thankful. But one thing I say the military taught me, though, is to have that never give up mentality. And I think that has served me so well, trying to become an entrepreneur and now becoming an entrepreneur. Right. As you know, I mean, you get kicked in the face numerous times. You got to be willing to get back up and just keep going. Right.
Quite a few.
You got you got to have some thick skin, no doubt about it, and have to be willing to keep moving forward if you're going to be successful in any business. But I think the military helped me with that. It's not an option to give up when you're in combat, right? Other people
when you're
are
under fire, and you got
right.
your buddies got to get the hell out of Dodge, right?
Yeah, that's right. Your buddies are counting on you to perform, right? And so came home from overseas, tried to figure out what I was going to do, and I loved the uniform, just the structure, the discipline, and decided policing was going to be the next route for me. Out of 1,200 applicants and 5 positions, I was blessed to have one of those with Kentucky State Police, and I loved working the road. Yeah, I loved working the road as a police officer. However, my wife and I got married about a year in, and then we ended up passing each other in the hallway the first whole year of marriage. And I started seeing people retiring, guys retiring with like 25, 30 years on, making 35, 40,000 at the most. And so the writing was on the wall then that, you know what, this is not what's best long term. And so that sent me on a push to figure out what else I could do. Like, how can I supplement my income, so we could have some more income. We wanted my wife to be able to stay at home when we had children, but that was going to be very difficult, right? On 30,000 a year, 40,000 if I worked all the overtime I possibly could, and a horrible schedule. And so we learned about real estate, and I found out that, not like 1 or 2 people have built wealth in real estate, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people have built
right.
Wealth in real estate. And so it was almost as simple as, if they can do it, I can do it too. So
it's the number one millionaire maker in our country for decades. The number one.
No doubt about it. So we bought 2 triplexes. This is in 2009. Bought 2 triplexes, and guess what? Made a ton of mistakes. I learned a lot the hard way. Self-managed. We were newly married. Added tons of stress, to the marriage and all those things. But we learned a lot. And I soon though became a federal agent, and that moved us to Virginia, where we still live now. But I kept pursuing real estate and got up to like a 15 unit. And believe it or not, during the same time, I was federal agent, and I was also training horses professionally. I was riding and selling horses for more money than I ever imagined. But, my wife and I were at the beach one fall, and we were just walking and praying, and we were just thinking about, I'm pretty much working 2 full-time jobs and doing some rentals up to, like I said, the 15 unit. And I just thought, we can't do this forever. It's never going to be passive. I'm always going to have to be the one training the horses, or the federal agent position, all those things. And so we decided it was time to really cut everything off and go full out on commercial real estate. And
none of this 3 full-time jobs. You want to just, if you're going to put in 18 hours a day, make it 1 job, right?
That's right. That's right. So we decided at that time that it was all or nothing. And I did hire a mentor during that time, and we actually sold our farm. It was the place we had really dreamed of, and we loved our place. But we knew that it was now or never. We sold our farm, and that was a hard day, by the way. It was such a hard day, but we just knew, and personally, I knew that we just needed to kind of cut that off completely, so I could be completely committed to this syndication business. But the more I learned about syndication, I'll back up just a little bit. I just couldn't believe I hadn't known about it so many years earlier, right? Pushing to grow a small rental business, small multis and single family. It was going to take so many and so much time to build up enough, right? And when I started going to conferences, Merrill, and I started meeting lots of people who had only been in the business a year or 2, but they were buying 100-unit apartment buildings. I just couldn't believe it. And again, I thought, okay, if they can do it, guess what? I can do it too. I can figure this out. And so we did. We pushed forward, and we obviously started the daily podcast. I just started traveling and networking as hard as I can go, building an investor base, and it's a big story from there. Are still a lot of details, but between partnerships and my business partner now, and actually being able to just grow our investor base and providing great value to investors while just running a great business around apartments and providing value to tenants as well.
Well, a brilliant evolution of where you've been. I'm still fascinated because when I heard Kentucky, I'm thinking Derby, right? Kentucky. Derby, Kentucky. So I'm sitting here going, when you're training horses, then like this is a Kentucky boy, right? I mean, straight through and through. So what was it? And you were making so much money training and selling horses. Some people would say, well, what are the yields on each? So because while other people may not be training horses, they may be doing something that they love doing, but it's active, not passive. Will you speak to that just a little more depth? Because you made a decision to sell your farm to stop or at least suspend doing something that you loved because there was still a limitation to it. Will you speak to that, please?
Yes, it was very difficult. And often when speaking to people, I talk about it. It was just a passion of mine since I was a little boy. And I say, you may have a passion, something that you're very passionate about, but it's almost like holding you back to some extent. Like you're still trying to do this thing, but it may not be what's best ultimately. And so
or
I still
right now, right?
That's right.
Maybe
right
not
now.
best right now.
That's exactly right. I'm glad you brought that up because it was never my plan to quit altogether, but I knew to grow our business. I mean, we had a growing family. We had started our third adoption process. We were moving. Obviously, we sold our farm, and committing to the syndication business. I was still working full time. We were starting a daily podcast while doing deals now as well in the syndication business. And so, I mean, it was as hard as I could go. And I knew that was coming. I didn't know honestly exactly how full my schedule was going to be, thankfully. But I did have to sell the farm, and I knew that's what was best. Okay. But to give up that passion, I knew that even just the farm, we loved living out on that farm.
Right.
But I knew if I do this now, guess what? I'll have horses again one day, and we can have a better farm. Right.
Even a better farm, better trainers, and send one of your horses to the Derby. So one of the things that I love about your story is that, and guys, we need to be really super conscious of this. You set a time frame of what you're going to suspend, because Whitney, to catch you up, we have in our tribe, we have what's called our Z, right? In the A to Z of life, what's your Z? What's your end game? What's the quality of life? It's not your why. It's not the motivation behind your activities, but it's the quality of your life when you arrive daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, and at the end of your life, right? So your Z includes significantly horses and training. But notice, guys, that he's talking about how to establish a framework, a time frame to say from here to here, we're going to change how we make money, change how we influence the world, so that when I come back to it, I'm Z times 3, Z times 5, right? So I want to acknowledge that. I want to stop and have our tribe really. The same goes for you. We're not saying don't go after your Z. The question is what's the fastest track so that you can have the biggest possible quality of life in for your life.
That's a great point. How fast do you want to get there, right? How fast do you want to get there? That was even behind doing a daily podcast, right? Like how fast do you want it to happen? It about killed me making that happen, but we did, right? We did. We pushed forward, and we did have to cut that off. But guess what, Merrill? Actually, tomorrow we're going to get a horse again. It's really a big day, right? What's that?
You're now back in the horse game.
That's right. We're back on a farm, and we are back on a farm, and we are. And our whole goal was to be able to leave the federal agent position as well, right?
Yes.
When all that started, I had reached the height, like in state police, and then all of a sudden with the federal agent position, there was only so high I could go, and it's like, am I really going to do this for 25 more years?
Right.
Right. Am I really, And so
the question is what do I want to do for the next 25 years? Right.
That's right.
Because, wasn't the answer. Definitely wasn't the answer. So tell us now then, you're back on a ranch, a farm. You're back on a new horse. Right. So how long were you not in that game? To give people a context of how long it took you to accelerate in moving a new path toward what I call a wealth strategy, because you chose syndication as your wealth strategy, right? You could choose, you could choose cold fusion storage. I just made that up. But we all have a wealth strategy. So I don't want to get lost in syndication. I want us to make the point that whatever wealth strategy, how long were you doing this wealth strategy, Whitney, before you now got the farm again, and now your next horse?
About 2.5 years. Well, 3 before the horse. But yeah.
Hello.
But I would also say, I would also say it seems short in that when I say it like that. But I would say we put in. I mean, 3 full-time jobs during most of that time.
Right.
And I'm almost not exaggerating. I mean, it's and the stress level on the family during that time. There's so many stories of like I would be in the home, but my children knew that like they wouldn't see me till almost Sunday, most Sundays. I mean, it's the craziest thing when I look back, right? I
Right.
would be taking investor calls or doing emails or whatever from 5 a.m. till 7 till I went to work for the federal agent position. I would come home and I would do 4 or 5 interviews for the daily podcast. And then I would also take investor calls or be interviewed on other shows and whatnot. But I would have 2 days a month where I would record like 15 interviews back to back to back to back, nonstop, just because I knew that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if that's what we got to do, let's go get it done. Right. But it did take that level of commitment. But I also say it took that same level of commitment from my wife and my children. I had to paint that vision of the farm and that, where we're going for them as well, because dad missed, almost every meal except for like dinner on Saturday and Sunday, with them. I built we moved in town. I built put two walls up in a corner of our basement where that was like my office for 2 years. I mean, that's where I lived. And unfortunately, but that's what it took.
Yeah, but the thing that I'm hearing you say, which is brilliant, and what I want our listeners, my tribe, to understand, is that anything is possible with a plan, right? We talk about the creative strategist, right? That creative part of us, the strategic part of us, being in full development, our full genius. And notice, guys, 2.5 years, but it was a plan, honey. Children, this is what it's going to look like, and it's going to be a sprint. And with everybody buys in, then we're responsible to the vision, not responsible to each other as husbands and wives or children, right? We're responsible as a group to this vision, and you nailed it. 2.5 years, you're back with horses, and your life is now more. You're still busy. But I know that you have. Tell us about your quality of life now after this massive sprint.
So yes, massive sprint. Our life has completely changed, right? I mean, completely changed. But as much as anything, I'm in control of my schedule, right? I mean, our team has more than doubled over the last year. I mean, we closed on over $100 million in real estate last year. I almost can't believe that. We were able to raise almost $45 million last year, from investors, and I mean, deals just filling up, within like 3 to 6 hours. Just so thankful for that. But now we're back on the farm. And now we are, getting a horse again. And now, but like I said, though, as much as anything, Merrill, I'm in charge of my time. And so now, guess what? I'm blocking off my schedule, blocking off my calendar in the afternoons, blocking off on the weekends, things like that, where I would normally have been working during that time. Now I get that family time, and it's still not as much as I want, but man, it's so much better than it was, right? The last few years, that was so hard on the family, but now I can be there. Now I have that time. Now, if we want to go on a trip, I can, just have the freedom, right?
Yep. See, it's the pivot, and to pivot requires it's stressful. It is very stressful period. So thank you for sharing this part. I love the direction where we've gone here, because I preach quality of life. We work on funding. We make people, we help people get funding so they can engage in their real estate investments and business endeavors, right? But unless they know what they're going to use that money for, what the end game is, right? What that Z is, then people sabotage themselves. They'll create ad hoc failures because they're not clear on where they're going. And so this is a wonderful tale of success of a short sprint, a pivot, short in the time of, it didn't take a decade, short pivot to go back to the quality of life you had known since you were a little boy. And now you get to fulfill that, but now you get to train your children. What children do you have? Girls, boys, how many?
Yeah, I've got 2 boys that are 6 and 8 and a daughter that's almost 2.
So here you go. Now their 6-year-old and 8-year-old dream is to go out with dad and ride horses, right? And learn that part of the business and build their quality of life. So brilliant. Thank you for sharing that, Whitney. That is awesome. So tell us now, in those hours you are working, since you've blocked some of your afternoons off, what is it? Something that caught my ear. You said that some of your syndications, some of your offerings fill up within 3 to 6 hours. Now, I want you to explain that, but if something that big is filling that fast, you have to have a reputation for delivering the goods for people to be knocking each other down to get in line. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say.
All right. So tell us about that, because I know I have a bunch of people who we've helped get funding, and I want to know, if you had $100,000, what is it that makes your deals so awesome, and what is your focus in taking care of investors, or keeping your promises, etc.? How do you do all that?
Of course. Oh, it's easy, Merrill. No, it's not easy. It's
easy. I snap my fingers and wave a magic wand. Yeah.
So, kind of two sides of that, right? As far as what we're doing on our side, but then just from an investor standpoint, what they're looking for, in deals, and what they're looking for in an operator, those things. I get the question often, Merrill, about, from passive investors. I speak to many passive investors every week, and that's our goal, right? Doing this podcast, doing all this stuff, we're trying to get in front of passive investors and them to learn who we are and get on that phone so we can develop that relationship, right? It's so crucial, right? Crucial they can know who you are.
Yes.
But I tell investors that, there's so many questions, Merrill, that they can ask about location and the property and the types of deals or the underwriting, all those things. But I say, before you do any of that, I want you to ask about the operator's character. I want you to figure out how they became who they are. I want you to know that there's somebody that has an extremely high level of integrity, right? They've had to make some hard decisions. They've been in hard places. They've seen hard times, whatever. For me, it's why I share about the military, obviously, and being overseas and law enforcement, federal agent. All those things are difficult, right? And so, I tell investors, figure out who somebody is. How did they become who they are? Are they going to do right by you, when times are tough? So that's something I just try to express. But also, Merrill, is our why and our mission, and the way that we give back. Behind LifeBridge Capital, we have the LifeBridge Foundation, and it was our whole goal from the very beginning, my wife and I, to help families that are adopting children to be able to afford to adopt. So we have 3 children through adoption, and most people have no idea that it can cost $40,000 to $60,000 to bring a child home through adoption. And there's 160 million orphans in the world. I mean, it's horrible. But the thing is, there's plenty of families that would love to adopt, but they say, Whitney, that's more than I make in a year. How can we bring a child home? If it's going to cost that much. So we've created the LifeBridge Foundation, and my wife and I commit half of our personal profits to that foundation. And believe it or not, Merrill, in just a few minutes, we get to award. We have other donors now as well. But we get to award 3 families very large grants today. This is our first day, Merrill. This is our first time doing this. So it is like a massive day for the business, and just a dream, just that the Lord has put in front of my wife and I, to be able to help other families. And today is that day. We got 3 families today, and we're getting a horse this weekend. So it's a big weekend.
This is an amazing week for you.
It is an amazing weekend. But that why is a big thing too. Why, investors love partnering with us. Not only do they get amazing returns, and they get to share in the depreciation in our deals, they benefit of owning real estate, but not having to do any of the day-to-day management, right? But they also know they're sharing in helping us help these families adopt children too. There's even part of that they get to play a role in, even though it doesn't affect their returns at all.
See, that's brilliant. First of all, congratulations. Are you kidding me? You're actually helping these families now. First set, right? Of, I'm assuming, going to be dozens and dozens. And then you also get you're picking up the horse, or you're starting that return to your quality of life. So it's got to feel good what you're doing. I mean, your personal commitment to what is happening out in your world, right? So you stated something that I'm a firm believer in, and that was that you said, before we get into the jots and tittles of the deal, let's find out who each other are to build a relationship. And on our end, we call it relationship banking. We only want to build long-term relationships with high-level banks, right? Tier 1, tier 2 banks, and we want those to be lifelong relationships. So that's part of what we do is we teach everybody how to create these relationships. And now you're telling my tribe, they're like, this guy's coming from that exact same place. So and looking for the integrity of the deal, right? Looking for the integrity of the operator. And what would you say is 1, 2, 3 things that make you unique because integrity is keeping your word. But in addition to keeping your word, what makes you fun, cool, outrageous to work with, right? What makes you the guy that says, you know what, I got 4 of these things to look at, but holy hell, Whitney is the bomb. And what makes you special?
I would almost, so I was presenting to a group of lady guys and gals yesterday about syndication and whatnot. And one thing that we talked about, obviously one question they ask is, what makes you stand out? And you mentioned, something about integrity and doing what you say you're going to do, all those things. And we got to talking about that. And what I have learned though, Merrill, is that, obviously I've interviewed almost 1,000 people in the last 3 years, over 1,000 people now on the podcast. But what I have found, I've met people who have businesses that that are doing what I'm doing, and been doing it for 20 years or longer. But I still find ways that I feel like we're doing things better, or
Sure.
we're rising to a higher level, whether it's reporting, whether it almost is sometimes as simple as doing what you say you're going to do, which I find they're not always. It's not as common as you think it is.
As you would wish it were, right?
That's right. It's just not as common as you think it is, but make sure you're doing what you say you're going to do. But it is. And I think really getting to know investors a little more on a personal level, and what I say too is, when I first started in this business, I didn't have any kind of network whatsoever, couldn't raise any money just a few years ago. But what I started to notice, Merrill, is when I would go to a conference, let's say there's 100, 200, 300 people there, it doesn't matter. And we're all there talking about real estate, right? You're all saying, hey, what do you do? What's your name? Right? You're all going around just like everybody knows at a conference or anywhere. But if you're all talking about real estate, they're not going to have a clue who you are tomorrow. Right. They don't have any idea who you are. And like I said, I didn't plan this, but what I started noticing is that people would ask me about the business and what we're doing. And I would share about our why, I would share about our mission, and I would share about the LifeBridge Foundation, and what's behind that real estate business. And guess what? They would have a lot more questions about that. And then the next day or a week later, when I would follow up, even though they talked to 25 or 100 people, they would still know who I was.
They would remember
and so
you.
It was a drastic difference, right? That set me apart from the very beginning because it was something they could see that I was passionate about. And it was something that we could connect with on a much more personal level, as opposed to just real estate or business. Right. Because that's what everybody there's talking about. Right. And so we connected on that. And guess what? We can talk about real estate next week. Right.
Yeah. See, I love it. And I don't know if this is a good analogy, but it comes to me. It's like, that's like writing a Shakespeare play, but you spend time talking about the letters of the alphabet, that no one's going to remember the letters of your conversation about what letters to use to write a Shakespeare play. They're going to remember the play itself, right? Mm-hmm. So your commitment to when you work with people, from what I'm gathering, is to connect on each other's why, connect on each other's Z, find out what the end game is, find out who they are and what they're about. And then real estate is just a strategy, right?
It is a strategy. We're in every facet of that. We're trying to be the top 1%, no doubt about it. And our whole team knows that. No matter what process it is, we're always trying to improve it to be the best.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, how can my tribe get a hold of you, find out more, attend any classes or webinars that you have, ways in which they can get to know you and your come from, and see what synergies might be out there?
Yeah, lifebridgecapital.com is the best place. So you can see our podcast there.
LifeBridge.
LifeBridge Capital. That's right. And you're welcome to email me, Whitney at lifebridgecapital.com, or you can call or text me at 540-585-4338.
Watch this. Watch this. Here it comes. Say that again. Repeat those.
540-585-4338. Call or text me or email Whitney at LifeBridge Capital.
Very good. So pop that up there, and we will. There we go. Whitney, LifeBridge. Connect with Whitney at LifeBridge Capital. Whitney at LifeBridge Capital. Thank you so much, Whitney, for being here with me, for sharing us your Z. I love horses. I raised my girls on horses, but I come from a cattle rancher heritage, right? My grandparents had we're literally herding cattle and branding them and the whole 9 yards. That was my, but life on a horse was so much fun, especially out in the wilderness. So I love that you're back. It didn't take long, but guys, remember, it's a sprint. Choose your strategy, create be crystal clear on your Z, on your end game, and then make a plan to attack the gap between those two. And if passive investing and remember, I only have folks on my show that I believe in, and I've researched their materials or have clients who've already used them. Whitney, you're a very unique man in an industry, real estate, that doesn't always have the most highest regard for honesty and integrity. And I just appreciate you being on my podcast so you could share your successes and your hard work, so that our tribe knows that it's everybody. If they do what it takes, we can all win. So any final words about you and yours?
No, I'm grateful to be here, Merrill. Pleasure to meet you and have you on the show, and look forward to connecting with anyone.
Absolutely. All right, guys, this is Merrill Chandler, your host of the Get Fundable podcast, the Get Fundable universe. Have a beautiful morning, afternoon, or evening.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments, because Merrill would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Merrill's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you got to tell your friends about this podcast, because we want them to get fundable too.